The college football playoff rankings are out. We got the Final Four, folks, of this crazy college football season. Man, this has been a crazy season. Some teams didn't play very many games. Some teams canceled games. I mean, it was no fans at some games. Some games got a few fans. Craziest college football season of our lifetimes. The Final Four is out. Woo! This college football season, the regular season is over. Life kind of sucks again. College football in the South is life. College football is life. SEC football in the South is life. It's oxygen, baby. It's oxygen. We live, we breathe, we think college football in the South, baby. Yeah! Woo! Love it down here, man. It's over. Season's over. Now we got the postseason. Most of us got bowl games. Hell, Mississippi State got a bowl game, didn't deserve a bowl game. You know, I mean, it's just crazy. And before we go any further, before we get any deeper, I'm just going to tell you right now, I ain't got a dog in the playoff race, son. I'm just going to tell it like it is. I'm a Mississippi State Bulldog to my core. Hell State, baby. So people will be like, oh, he's biased for this team and that team. No, I'm a Mississippi State Bulldog. You can bet on that. I don't like no other college team. I don't like them. I just tell the facts. My Bulldogs wasn't that good this year. We played better toward the end of the season. I'm excited about next year right now. If you're a Mississippi State Bulldog fan, you got to be excited about next year right now because the way we played Georgia, just that game alone right there, the way we played Georgia lets me know that next year is going to be a better year. Hail State, baby. So now that we got that little disclaimer out of the way, and every one of you knows that I ain't got a dog in this race, don't like none of them. Can't stand them. But the facts are the facts. We got 4 teams in the college football playoff. Do they all belong? Maybe. Does some of them not belong? I mean, we're going to argue that in a few minutes. I am going to spill out the argument for all 4 teams to be in the college football playoff, and it's coming from somebody that can't stand none of them. I'm a Mississippi State Bulldog. Understand that. The only people on the planet that understand what it means to be a Mississippi State Bulldog is other Mississippi State Bulldogs. The rest of y'all don't understand what it's like to be a diehard fan to the core of life. Because a lot of them, you got a lot of Alabama fans that live around where I live, and the first sign of trouble, they start tucking their flags away. Well, Roll Tide, I don't know what you're talking about this week. We got beat. Last year when they got beat by Auburn, I saw flags coming down quicker. Wow, it was fast. LSU fans over here in Mississippi the same way. First sign of trouble. This year, they ain't been running their mouth at all. You ain't been seeing no LSU stuff flying around everywhere. They go and hide because they ain't true fans, those people that do that. But Mississippi State fans know what I'm talking about. You're a Mississippi State fan to the core. There ain't no in between. Now, we fixing to argue all 4 of these teams and why they should or should not be in the playoffs, and you're going to get it straight the facts, baby. And that's a fact. Let's take a look at all 4 teams, what qualifies them to be in the college football playoff. Let's start with Notre Dame. Why not? Does Notre Dame belong in the college football playoff this year? Some people can argue that they don't. They beat Clemson. Then Clemson beat them. And then Notre Dame beat North Carolina. That's really their other quality win. And North Carolina has just recently started playing football. They've always just been a basketball school to me, like Duke and Kentucky. always been known for having a great football team. So that really don't qualify Notre Dame to be in the playoff beating North Carolina. They beat Clemson. I thought Clemson was a shoo-in. Florida thought they was a shoo-in until somebody threw a damn shoe, didn't they? Florida was wanting to be in this discussion, but a shoe flew 25 yards down the field and took away any chance that Florida might have had to get in this playoff. They win that game, they possibly got some momentum going. What if they'd have beat Alabama? You know, I mean, Florida, SEC champs, they got to be in. But a shoe went flying, and we don't know what if because somebody threw a shoe. But, you know, Notre Dame, they've been good for a few years. They've been up at the top of the line. They beat Clemson. I think Notre Dame deserves this playoff spot. That's my personal opinion. I think Notre Dame deserves it. You can't give, okay, let's just take this for example. You can't give Texas A&M Notre Dame spot in the playoffs, can you? You cannot. You cannot. So therefore, Notre Dame deserves to be in the playoffs because A&M's right on the edge of them. So if Notre Dame can't take A&M's spot, then Notre Dame deserves to be in the playoffs. They had a couple of good quality wins. They did beat Clemson. It was a nail-biter. I watched that game, and I rarely watch ACC games. I'm just going to tell you the truth, unless it's a big game. And I didn't think that was going to be that big of a game, and then it turned into a bigger game than what I thought. And then Notre Dame won. So I think they deserve to be in the playoffs. I think Notre Dame earned their spot. Now let's take a look at Clemson, okay? Clemson had a decently impressive win, I thought, over Miami. 42-17. Miami's a pretty decent football team, typically. So I thought that was a good quality win that maybe, you know, started them in the right direction to qualifying for the Final Four. And then they got to Notre Dame, playing Notre Dame, and lost. It was a shock. But they lost. But I think they learned a lot from that loss. That's what I think. Sometimes a team just needs a good loss. You know, not like go out there and get slaughtered. An overtime loss is a good loss. Okay, you take anybody to overtime, you got to take your chances in overtime. But for 60 minutes, you were dead equal because that's what overtime is. After 60 minutes exactly of play, if the score is tied, then both teams are a dead equal. And the equalizer is overtime. And it gets crazy in overtime. Sometimes you can't even kick an extra point. Sometimes you got to go for two. It depends on where you're at in overtime. It's all kind of different rules to different stages of overtime. But, you know, I think they learned from that Notre Dame loss. I think it's obvious that they learned from it because they got to play them again, didn't they? And Clemson come out on top and punched their ticket to the Final Four. If Clemson had lost to Notre Dame again, they would have had to give up their spot to Texas A&M. But because they beat Notre Dame, because they learned from the first loss, they punched their ticket to the Final Four. So I think they deserve to be there. I think Clemson deserves their spot in the Final Four. And that's the argument for them, is they got several good quality wins, but they also have a good quality loss. And it doesn't get any more fine a quality loss than to have lost in overtime. Now, if Notre Dame had slaughtered Clemson the first go-around, we might be talking a different story. But they didn't. They didn't. They barely beat them. That's when you win in overtime, you barely won. Sometimes it's about luck in overtime, too. Let's don't forget that. You got to have some luck in overtime or you're going to lose. So Clemson definitely deserves their spot in the Final Four. Now let's talk about Alabama. Alabama and why they deserve to be in the college football Final Four or don't deserve. And I'm just going to be honest with you. There's one person out there that does not think Alabama deserves to be in the playoffs, college football playoffs. You're a moron, okay? Plain and simple. You heard it here first. Beep, 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 beep. Breaking news. You are a moron. Okay, they beat number 5. These are year-end rankings now. This is not where people were ranked at the time they beat them. This is now rankings. College football playoff rankings. Number 5, A&M. They handled them. They took care. Look, A&M wasn't about to win that game. It's just what it is. They handled them. Alabama's bad to the bone this year. Number 9, Georgia. They handled them. Georgia was done in the second half. They were done. They weren't in that game for the entire second half. Number 7, Florida. Turned into a nail biter. Okay? Because they're number 7. You ain't just going to whip the number 7 team in the country typically and not pay for it a little bit. See, you Alabama fans, you was all nervous there a little bit, time or two, you know. You was like, oh, what's going on now? How come they're scoring again? We're supposed to be scoring. Well, Florida's a little bit better than what everybody thought. Dan Mullen is a great coach. Believe me, I know. Dan Mullen come to Mississippi State and took us to a number 1 ranking for 5 weeks. We was whipping everybody. So Dan Mullen is a great coach, and don't ever bet against him. Ever. Number 5, number 9, number 7 team in the country. They beat all 3 of them. 2 of them, they handled them. A&M and Georgia got it manhandled is what they got. So there is no doubt that Alabama should be the number 1 team in the country. Back when Clemson was ranked number 1, I was arguing about that because Clemson hadn't proved to be anything to be ranked number 1. And then they lost to Notre Dame, which was really the first real stiff competition they had all year. Alabama should have been ranked number 1 from the first day of the season. And they proved why. And you keep betting against them. And that's where all this thing becomes political. For Clemson to be ranked number 1 over Alabama at any point in time in this season, you now know must be political. I want you to sit back and look back on the season from right now. And I want you to think in your mind that Alabama ever deserved to be ranked number 2 to Clemson at any point during this season. They did not, which makes me know that these rankings are political. Too many politics in college football. There's no time for it. Them kids are out there playing their hearts out, and you're deciding what happens to them at the end of the season and who they play based on politics. And I know it to be a fact now. Just the fact that Clemson was ranked over Alabama at any point in time during this season means politics was involved. You knew they weren't as good. But you got to play your politics in your rankings and do your little butt kissing while these kids pay for it that are out there playing their hearts out, trying to get to the NFL, trying to make their family happy, trying to impress some girl or whatever they're trying to do. And at the end of the year, you let politics come in to deciding who plays for a championship and who doesn't. And it's sickening to me. I'm sick and tired of politics in college football. Them kids don't deserve it. It's a bunch of BS if you ask me. But the argument for Alabama to be ranked number 1 and be in the college football playoff, 100% guaranteed, they are the only team that 100% should be there. 100%. Because if Clemson would have lost to Notre Dame again, they were out. Alabama was in without a doubt, no matter what. Didn't matter. Everybody knows they're the number 1 team in the country. I cannot stand Alabama. I can't stand them. But the facts are the facts. They whip us every year. We're in the West, they're in the West. And a lot of these schools that want to go around talking about, we ought to be considered for the playoff. Why don't you come down here to the SEC West and play a West schedule for a year and then go talking you smack? It's brutal, baby. It's brutal. Alabama, they're going to win it all, baby. And last, but certainly not least, Ohio State. Ohio State played 6 games this year. 6 qualifying games this year to qualify them for the college football playoff, while every other team played 11 qualifiers. To me, Ohio State shouldn't even be considered this year for the college football playoff. First of all, the conference couldn't even get their act together. Blame it on their conference. Blame it on whoever you want to blame it on. But you played 6 games, and that does not qualify you on my sheet for you to be in the college football playoff. You have not proven yourself at all. You've played a little short schedule. You got months and months, weeks and weeks and weeks more rest leading up to the season than the 3 other teams that qualified that actually earned a spot there. And I know you little Ohio State fans, you're getting your feelings all hurt and you're getting all deep down in your emotions and you're letting it just about get the best of you. They don't belong there. They didn't prove their way to get there. It's a fact. They only played 6 games. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. They're only in the college football playoff because they were in there last year. This is where the politics is coming in. They played 6 games. You cannot qualify them for the college football playoff because they have not played since the same time frame these other teams have had to play from. It's like coming in the middle of the season. And that's what they did. They came in the middle of the season. I want y'all to think about this. How is that acceptable to be playing for a national championship when you came in the middle of the season? You come in the middle of the season, get a normal bowl game, that's fine. Honorable mention. But the fact is, Ohio State came in the middle of the season and is playing for a national championship because of politics. Just because they were there last year. Okay, let's go here. LSU was the national champions last year. Right? Ohio State wasn't. LSU was the national champions this year. Why didn't we tell LSU, hey, you're going to play a 6-game schedule and you're going to get weeks and weeks and weeks more rest leading up to the season, and you're going to be in the college football playoff against 3 other teams that had to play 5 more games than you. It is unreasonable. I cannot believe that they allowed this to happen. Ohio State didn't come in to the middle of the game. They don't deserve a chance to play for a national championship. And their resume states it as well. They beat number 11 Indiana and number 4 Northwestern. That's it. That's it. And they started playing in the middle of the game, middle of the season. So you mean to tell me a team comes to the table in the middle of the season and say, hey, boys, I want to come play with y'all. I know it's the middle of the season, and I know we already missed 5 games, but we just want to play 6. And then we expect to play for it all. BS. They should not have been considered. They ain't beat nobody to indicate they should play for a national championship. A&M played an entire season. All season long, the 10 regular season games, they lost 1 time. They lost to the best football team in the country, hands down. That's who they lost to. So if you play your whole season, and they're in the West also, buddy, so they're playing a brutal West schedule. Believe me, everybody in the SEC West knows what I'm talking about. If you do not reside in the SEC West with your fanmanship, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. Because there's no other conference with a side to it that is as brutal as the SEC. And the East is getting more fierce too. I mean, Tennessee, they're going to start getting better here in a year or two, man. You got Florida and Georgia already. South Carolina, they're going to start coming back to the table. You can bet on that. So the East is starting to build up a little bit too. But that West schedule's fierce. Last year's national champs was in that West schedule. But Ohio State, man, this is almost borderline cheating. If we had a NASCAR race, 400 lapper. Okay, I'm a huge NASCAR fan. Everybody knows that. If we had a 400 lap NASCAR race, right? And a driver team pulls up after the race has already started, they ain't at the track yet. So they pull up with about 100 laps into a 400 lap race, and they say, "Hey, we might want to come play with y'all. I might want to come race this race today." And then you wait till it gets to the halfway point of the race, and they let that car in the race. And that car goes out there and wins. And everybody would be in an uproar. Everybody would be like, what is going on? That car didn't start the race. How can you win something you didn't start? And that's what I'm asking, is how has Ohio State got a chance to play for a national championship? They started halfway into the season. It's garbage. If I was an Ohio State fan, I would feel shame. I'm a serious college football fan. I love college football. And I love the truth about college football. It's the greatest football there is on the planet. People say, no, that NFL football, BS, man. No. College football is supposed to be pure. But your college football playoff committee is tainting the game by allowing someone into the playoffs that didn't come to the game until halftime. Garbage. Keep your politics out of college football. Get them out of it now. Now. Nobody's got time for this. These kids, they work hard. They practice hard. They dedicate themselves. We tell them, the coach tells them, you dedicate yourself to this program, son, and we will go places. You dedicate yourself, and that's what these kids hear. You dedicate yourself. You dedicate yourself. You dedicate yourself. Now these kids are looking around like Texas A&M going, coach, we dedicated ourselves. Another team didn't show up till halftime, and now they've won the game. Hog wash. Just because they was there last year. If I was an Ohio State fan, I'd feel shame. I would demand my school pull out of this playoff. I would demand it. You didn't show up until halftime. You don't get to win the game. You go out there and you play 11 qualifying games, 10 qualifying games, just like the rest of these teams did, and work their butts off, just like they did, because you didn't work as hard as they did this year, because you didn't play but 6 games. So there's no way you can say you put in the work. Damn, I got a cough from that one. I usually choke on BS, and you see I'm choking. I don't know what it's going to take. I tell you what it's going to take. This is what I think it's going to take. Because you have a 4-team college football playoff, that means that politics is going to get involved. And it's been involved since day one. Don't even try to convince me it hasn't. We didn't like the BCS. Then we're going to get this playoff. And we got a playoff, and then it becomes political. it's guaranteed to be political because you got a team that didn't show up until halfway into the season to decide they wanted to play, and they're in that college football playoff. Well, they played the 10-game seasons they were dealt. But the only way we're going to fix this, I think, man, I love that Aquafina now. That's good water right there. The only way we're going to fix this that I believe in my heart is to expand the playoff to 8 teams, okay? 8 teams, take the politics out of it because the kids damn sure don't deserve it. Politics aside, 8 teams in this playoff. The Power 5 conferences, all 5 of those conference winners get an automatic bid no matter what. You win any of those conferences, you're automatically in. Okay? There's your 5 teams right there. Then you got 3 at-large bids. Now, those at-large bids, let's just say Alabama and Florida's in the SEC game, SEC title game again next year. They're both undefeated, and Alabama edges out Florida by 6 or 7 points. Then you gotta give Florida one of those at-large seeds in that situation. At-large seed would also be your smaller conference champs if they went undefeated, like say an undefeated Marshall, okay? Or you got all these other conferences. American Conference, an undefeated American Conference champ. You see what I'm saying? Make this 8 teams, take the politics out, because when it's 4 teams, the politics gets involved. And that's all it can be. You cannot convince me that a team that showed up halfway through the season that decided they wanted to play deserves a chance to play with teams that have been playing the whole season. No, I cannot be convinced of it. And I hope you don't just take this stuff like the rest of us have to. Bunch of BS, man. Ohio State in the college football playoff after only playing 6 games when all the other teams that are in there played 11. Shame on you, college football playoff committee, for allowing politics to interfere with these kids. There is no excuse for it. A&M should be in that 4th spot, period. They played a full season to get there, and they beat some really good teams. I just don't want to hear nothing else about it. It's a bunch of BS. Bunch of BS. Expand it to 8 teams and quit messing around. These kids don't deserve it, and we're not going to put up with it.